see from the bottom. So just to orientate you a bit, you've got this hole here, the foramen ovale, and remember Mandy is oval, so the mandibular branch of the trigeminal passes through there, which you can't see on this side, but I've put it in here. There's the mandibular branch of the trigeminal passing through there. So that's the foramen ovale, and then remember lateral and posterior to that you've got the foramen spinosum. So you can see the middle meningeal artery going in there. Just rotate it around so you can have a look at that. So we've rotated this skull upside down and we're looking at the inferior view. So you've got the foramen ovale, the foramen spinosum, and you've got the middle meningeal artery passing through there. So just while we're in this view, you can see just posterior to this you've got the optic canal. Sorry, what am I talking about? The carotid canal. And it's called the carotid canal because the internal carotid artery passes through this little hole, and then it joins the circle of Willis at the base of the brain. So you can see this complex arterial supply to the brain. So it's, if we just follow you've got the carotid, common carotid here, and then it bifurcates into the external carotid with all its multiple branches, and I'm going to do a tutorial on this. And you've got the internal carotid, which passes through the carotid canal into the brain, and it joins here with the circle of Willis. So that passes through the carotid canal, which is here. And obviously you've got that on either side. Try and ignore these labels, they're just put up here for me to get the right display. But that's the carotid canal, and with the internal carotid and the middle meningeal artery passing through the foramen spinosum. Okay, so coming to the posterior cranial fossa now, so all this bit here, we've now got the internal auditory meatus, the jugular foramen, and the hypoglossal canal. So the internal auditory meatus has two cranial nerves passing through it, and if you look at the origin of these cranial nerves, you can see them at the bottom of the pons and laterally. So we've got the vestibulocochlear nerve and the facial nerve, so cranial nerves 7 and 8. So cranial nerve 7, which is the facial nerve, so you can see it's slightly anterior to the vestibulocochlear nerve, which is this one here, and they run through the internal auditory meatus. So also passing through the internal auditory meatus, but not on this model here, as the labyrinthine artery. So you've got the facial nerve, the vestibulocochlear nerve, and the labyrinthine artery going through the internal auditory meatus. And again, it's quite logical if you think about it, because the vestibulocochlear nerve is to do with hearing and balance, and internal auditory meatus kind of gives away the fact that it's a foramen to do with hearing, auditory, and then you've got the vestibulocochlear nerve passing through that. So it's quite logical if you think about these things. So just inferior to this, we've got the jugular foramen. Just looking at this view again. So we've just done the internal auditory meatus, which is up here, and now we're looking at the jugular foramen, which is here. And then you've got the hypoglossal canal further down, which is the next one I'm going to talk about. So the jugular foramen has loads of structures that pass through it. It's called the jugular foramen for a reason, because the internal jugular passes through it. So I've just flicked back to the base of the skull view, so you You can see what I'm doing here, base of the skull. So that was the carotid canal. So posterior to that and slightly lateral, you've got the jugular foramen, and you can see all these structures passing out. So all these nerves passing out, which you saw in the other view, and you've got this vein, the internal jugular vein, which passes through the jugular foramen, hence the name. So I'll just rotate it around a bit, you can see, zoom out. Again, try and ignore all these labels and just look where my mouse is pointing. So you've got the internal jugular vein passing up here. Coming off the superior vena cava. And then passing through the jugular foramen into the inside of the skull. So flicking back to the view from inside. So just so you can have a look what we're looking at. We're looking at the jugular foramen here. So just zoom in a bit again. And I'll just talk about the nerves. So we've got a couple of nerves that pass through the jugular foramen. We've got the 9th, 10th and 11th cranial nerves. So these nerves emerge from the medulla, and the most superior one, we've got the 9th nerve, the glossopharyngeal nerve, then we've got the vagus nerve, and then we've got this nerve which has it goes through both this foramen and the foramen magnum. So these three nerves which emerge from the medulla, the glossopharyngeal nerve, the vagus nerve and the accessory nerve. So cranial nerves 9, 10 and 11 pass through the jugular foramen. So that's 4 structures to remember. You've got cranial nerves 9, 10 and 11, and you've got the internal jugular vein. So just having a look at that again from the base. So you've got the internal jugular vein and you've got all these nerves coming out of the jugular foramen. So next we're going to be looking at this, the hypoglossal canal. No prizes for guessing what passes through that, but just having a look at a close look. If I rotate around to the front, you can see this nerve here, which is the 12th cranial nerve, emerging ventrally on the brainstem, on the medulla. So the hypoglossal nerve passes through the hypoglossal canal. So this little foramen here, and you can see that nerve from the base of the skull view. So just, you've got the jugular foramen here, you've got the carotid canal here where the internal carotid, you've got the jugular foramen with its 3 nerves and the internal jugular, and you've got the hypoglossal canal where the hypoglossal nerve emerges, the 12th cranial nerve. So just to finish up, obviously this big hole is the foramen magnum, and here you've got the beginning of the spinal cord at the junction where the brainstem meets the spinal cord, passing through here. You've got vertebral arteries passing through here, and you've got the spinal roots of the accessory nerve. So remember, the accessory nerve, cranial nerve 11, passes through the jugular foramen and also through the foramen magnum. It's got two roots. You've got the roots up here and the spinal roots which pass through the foramen magnum. So that's the foramen magnum with the obviously the spinal cord passes through there and the brainstem, the vertebral arteries and the spinal roots of the accessory nerve. And just one more thing, if you remember this foramen here from the previous tutorial, the foramen lacerum, no structures pass through this, and in life it's filled with cartilage. Okay, so I know that was a long tutorial, but hopefully you now know what vessels and nerves pass through the different foramen, and you have a good idea of the different foramen in the skull now.